Dear friends, I send warm greetings from Jerusalem to the European Leadership Network and to all of you participating in this event online. As the world struggles to contain the COVID-19 pandemic, collaborating with our partners from around the world is as crucial as ever. ELNET's support network has strengthened the ties between the State of Israel and our many friends in Europe by facilitating professional exchanges and enhancing dialogue between Israelis and Europeans. While your work to counter anti-Semitism and the anti-Israel boycott movement in Europe has yielded tangible results, there is still much that remains to be done. On behalf of the people of Israel, I thank you for your efforts in promoting a more balanced European approach towards the Jewish state, emphasizing shared values, practical cooperation, and common interests. I deeply appreciate your ongoing solidarity and wish you many more years of continued success. Sincerely, Benjamin Netanyahu.
Welcome to the Friends of ELNET National Virtual Gala, Winning the Battle for Israel in Europe, where we will be joined by political leaders, including Israel's President Reuven Rivlin, Minister of Foreign Affairs Gabi Ashkenazi, Opposition Leader Yair Lapid, and United States Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism, Ilan Carr. And now, please welcome your host, American-Israeli actor, writer, and director, Mike Burstyn.
Shalom, and thank you for joining us. ELNET, the European Leadership Network, is the premier organization for Israel advocacy in Europe. Now, why focus on Europe? Europe is Israel's largest trade partner, funder of Israeli innovation, and a major player in global diplomacy. While about 80% of the U.S. Congress has visited Israel, less than 10% of European legislators have been there. ELNET was founded in 2007 to address the deficit in high-level contacts between European and Israeli officials. ELNET developed unique strategies to advance high-level engagement and has reached more than 4,000 leaders. What does this actually mean? Leaders, often with no prior personal experience with Israel, are brought there to meet with their counterparts and gain a true understanding beyond the headlines. They learn that Israel, the only true democracy in the Middle East, is a country rich in intellectual capital and a leader in technology and innovation. ELNET opens Europe's eyes to all that Israel has to offer as a partner for mutual growth and security. Due to COVID-19, ELNET pivoted its programming online and has been reaching an even wider audience with strategic dialogues, high-level briefings, and our popular Monday Zoom events. With affiliate offices and networks across Europe, ELNET is able to build lasting relationships with policymakers and business leaders, as well as teach local friends how to conduct grassroots advocacy in their countries. The battle for Israel in Europe is ongoing, and ELNET is winning it. To continue this work, we need your support. See that button down there? Please, click and make your tax-deductible contribution.
Stay with us. Later in the program, we'll be hearing from Israel's Foreign Minister, Gabi Ashkenazi, Chairman of the Yesh Atid Party and Opposition Leader in the Knesset, Yair Lapid, and the United States Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism, Ilan Carr. In just a moment, we'll hear from Israel's President, Reuven Rivlin.
Hello, I am Larry Hochberg, Chairman of the Friends of ELNET and co-founder of the ELNET program, which was established 13 years ago. We are a voluntary and privately funded organization solely dedicated to aiding our European affiliates in being effective educators for establishing and maintaining close relations between their countries and Israel. ELNET makes its own decisions based upon vision and reality. We rely on the generosity of our contributors to provide the financial resources so that ELNET is represented by high-quality, sophisticated professionals in the country where we operate. There is wind at our backs now, and we want to make continued progress in those countries where we are currently active and begin to meet the needs of other countries who are reaching out for our assistance. Funds stretch much farther in Europe than they do here in the United States. ELNET is extremely careful on expenditures, using your contributions to actively improve relations with Israel. Enjoy our program as you get a feel for the essence of life in our European and Israeli offices. We believe that you will be impressed by the ELNET affiliate directors and our special guests. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Larry. And we look forward to hearing from you again later in the program. We are honored to have with us today Israel's President, Reuven Rivlin, who knows a thing or two about bringing people together. Israel and the Jewish people have shared a treasured history with as many opinions and characters as years we've been a people. Whether from the right or the left, Israel is what brings us all together.
Dear friends, leaders and supporters of ELNET, here from Jerusalem, I want to send you my warm greetings to you all. It has been more than 10 years that ELNET works in Europe, promoting dialogue and making sure that the relation between Israel and Europe remains strong and stable. The history of the Jewish people and the history of Europe are bound together. We had dark and tragic times, as well as many times of tight relation. Nowadays, the State of Israel and the nations of Europe share democratic values of freedom and human dignity. Last January, I hosted here in Jerusalem at the President's House dozens of world leaders, more than 50 of them, many from Europe in the World Holocaust Forum in Jerusalem. We all stood together and promised to fight against anti-Semitism, against racism, against hate. You in ELNET are here to make sure that we remember how much we have in common. I would also like to express my deep appreciation to Mr. Larry Hochberg for all that you do for the State of Israel and for humanity. I want to thank you, Larry, and to all of you, leaders and supporters of ELNET. So let's say and let's bless one each other. God bless all of you.
Toda Rabba. Thank you, President Rivlin, for that inspiring message. ELNET Israel serves as the epicenter for activity and strategic focus for all of the ELNET affiliate offices. We now take you to Israel to hear firsthand from our team on the ground.
Hi, I am Shai Bazak, CEO of ELNET Israel. ELNET Israel is the central hub of the organization. We work closely with our affiliates in the various countries in Europe. We are hosting here delegations from all the European countries. Last year we did more than 30 delegations. We are doing strategic dialogues with specialists and decision makers from all around Europe with their counterparts from Israel. And lately, of course, because of the coronavirus period, we're doing many virtual events, and we took European ambassadors in Israel to tour around Israel, and we are going to do it again and again because they have much more influence in these times as the only boots on the ground of the European countries in Israel. Lately we took the European ambassadors to the southern borders of Israel, close to the Gaza Strip. We showed them the Hamas tunnels. The IDF specialists talked to them and explained to them about the situation in the border, and I think they came out, the European ambassadors, after this trip, and they say to understand it is to know it and to see it in our own eyes. And we saw it and we understand now.
A wonderful day, perfectly organized, to see the tunnels, to see the blue line, and to meet people involved in the difficulties, the local difficulties here. And everything is extremely important. It is necessary to see by yourself the reality on the ground. Because if not, you have a kind of false representation of what is happening here. The reality is always different, and it is important for us to understand, to talk with people, and to see everything, the wall, the tunnels, the line, etc., etc. So I wanted to thank ELNET and everybody, because once again it is very well organized and extremely important for all the ambassadors, my colleagues from the EU, to be here today.
It was an amazing trip and very important initiative who allowed us, me and my colleagues, to see with our eyes what is the situation here, because I'm afraid that there are not so many people who knows the reality. And this gives me a live example how the people live and what is the situation, and this will help me a lot in my diplomatic work.
Yes, it was extremely interesting today because it's my first time I've been in so near Gaza Strip, and I've heard many things and I've read many things, but I've never seen the place by so near, and I was impressed by what the lady in the kibbutz have told us about the rockets and the mortars and the everyday routine that they have every day.
We also arranged a meeting for them with the southern commander of the Israeli Defense Forces, and we're going to do another part again and again in the next few months in order for them to understand the Israeli reality. I served many years in the public arena. I stood alongside with all the prime ministers in the last 30 years. I came with them to the meetings in Europe with presidents, prime ministers, kings and queens. I saw how important is the relationship between Israel and Europe, how much efforts we have to put in order to make this relationship much stronger. And we need to do it, and ELNET Israel is the one who are doing it day to day, all over the time. And I see this mission with great importance, and we need your help with this. I want to ask you, my friends, from here, from Israel, to support us and to help us in our efforts to bring Israel and Europe closer together. It's very important to us, especially in challenging times like this. We really appreciate your help. Toda rabah.
My name is Dan Katarivas. I'm the Director General for Foreign Trade and International Relations at the Israeli Manufacturers Association, and I'm also the Chairman of the Israel-EU Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Europe is extremely important for Israel because this is our largest both export and import market, but on the political side, things are a bit less, I would say, comfortable. And actually, ELNET is bringing the real image of Israel and the real fact about what's happening here in the region to decision makers in Europe, which is very essential because most of the decision makers in Europe are exposed to a different type of news and don't get the real information. ELNET is doing an excellent job. I can see it when I meet Europeans that are coming here, when I talk to them. I can see that ELNET has definitely a very good influence and impact on the way they are looking at Israel. So I think that, again, the work is extremely important. Relations with Europe are extremely important, and especially now, in time of crisis, it's even more essential to support ELNET and to help us doing that type of job.
Thank you, ELNET Israel, for your leadership as the center point of this incredible organization. In a moment, we will be hearing from Ilan Carr, the United States Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. In this capacity, he advises the Secretary of State and is responsible for directing U.S. policy aimed at countering anti-Semitism throughout the world. He is the son of Jewish refugees who fled persecution in Iraq. An active voice in the Jewish community, Special Envoy Carr has been a recognized leader in the fight against anti-Semitism on U.S. college campuses and around the world. Ilan, thank you for your service, and thank you for being with us.
Hello, ELNET. Thank you so much for having me as part of your first virtual gala. My compliments to your superb lay and professional leaders, especially to my friend Larry Hochberg and my friend and AEPI brother David Siegel. I'm so proud of the work that you do. I'm honored to share this program with President Rivlin and Foreign Minister Ashkenazi. I'm grateful for everything they do to keep the Jewish state and the Jewish people safe and strong. I so wish that I could be with all of you in person. Many of us were together 1 year ago in Paris. What a magnificent conference that was. But as we wrestled then with the challenges facing us, we could not have realized that the first infections of a global contagion were already beginning to appear in China, and that soon a storm would sweep across the world. When the global economy froze, and as human interactions moved online, we saw the internet deluged with anti-Semitism of every variety and from every source. In the first 3 quarters of this year, nearly 2 million anti-Semitic posts appeared on Twitter and YouTube alone. That doesn't count for the enormous volume on Facebook, nor does it take into account the fringe platforms or those of the deep web. That's why the State Department convened last month the first ever U.S. government-sponsored conference addressing the menace of online anti-Semitism. Hate on the internet and social media has been a key priority for my team and me, because this is one of the main reasons for the increase in anti-Semitism over the last decade. Let me mention some of our other core lines of effort, because I know that many of you involved with ELNET share those same priorities. We work to ensure the physical safety of Jewish communities. Without safety, there is no quality of life. We stress that every country should investigate, prosecute, and appropriately punish hate crimes. We push for the adoption of the IRA working definition of anti-Semitism, because defining a threat is the first step in effectively confronting it. We advocate for the appointment of national anti-Semitism coordinators, because if you want something done, you've got to put someone in charge of getting it done. We encourage our allies to do the right thing and stand strong against the world's chief state sponsor of both terrorism and anti-Semitism, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that includes designating Hezbollah in its entirety as a terrorist organization. We fight against efforts to outlaw Brit Milah, male circumcision, and Shechita, kosher slaughter. As I have said publicly, if a country prohibits Jews from living as Jews, it is equivalent to a forced expulsion of its Jewish community. We fight against the demonization and delegitimization of the State of Israel, including by opposing the anti-Semitic global BDS movement, because hatred of the Jewish state is hatred of the Jewish people. We also fight BDS on university campuses, where besieged Jewish students are harassed and discriminated against, and forced to abandon or conceal part of their Jewish identity as the price for their safety. Finally, we have another core line of effort that is vitally important, and that is education. I don't mean education about anti-Semitism or the Holocaust, though that is certainly important. I mean an education in philo-Semitism, inculcating an understanding and appreciation of the Jewish people, the Jewish story, and the profound and indelible contributions of the Jewish people and Jewish values to our world. I call it going on the offense against Jew hatred. When we do this important work, I know that in Europe, we could not have a better partner than ELNET. With every issue you address, with every conference you convene, with every parliamentarian you lobby or bring to Israel, you roll back the forces of darkness, weaken the BDS movement, uplift and empower Jewish students, and strengthen the ties between Europe and Israel. Just think for a moment of all the good news we have had from Europe in the last year. The anti-BDS bills of the German Bundestag and the Austrian Parliament, the marginalization or electoral defeat of political parties that embrace anti-Semitism, the tangible action plans against anti-Semitism that every single EU member state is drafting. These are only a few of the many examples. And so, my friends, thank you for all that you do. May you go from strength to strength, and may we continue to work together to build that better world that our children so richly deserve.
Thank you, Ilan, for your outstanding dedication to the security of Israel and the Jewish people. As you noted, the aim of the BDS movement is to undermine Israel's right to exist. This is why one of ELNET's core missions is to combat BDS at its source in Europe. Last year, in a major blow to the BDS movement, the French Parliament passed historic legislation against anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. ELNET France brought the sponsor of the bill to Israel, together with his entire committee, who subsequently drafted and passed the resolution. In fact, more than 80% of all senior French officials visiting Israel in recent years were brought by ELNET. This includes 180 French legislators, more than 1/3 of the entire French Parliament, who formed the majority that passed the bill. Civil society in Europe, including Muslim communities, have key influence in the political process. These communities have become major targets of extremist elements. Last year, our colleagues from France brought 40 Muslim imams and community leaders to Israel to see the country with their own eyes. It was a transformational, life-changing experience that they shared with their communities back home. We're tremendously proud of our team in Paris and are excited to introduce them to you now. But we cannot do this alone. With your partnership, ELNET will continue to foster these groundbreaking partnerships and impact. Please remember to click the donate button at the bottom of your screen to show your support for their remarkable work.
Dear friends, I'm so happy to join you for this celebration. This is our collective bar mitzvah, and we can say Mazal Tov to ELNET and FELNET. What we have accomplished within 13 years is undisputed, and we are very, very fortunate to live at a time where we can see all the good benefits of our advocacy. Look at the Abraham Agreement, how fast and how big they are changing the situation in the Middle East. And what we have ahead of us is even more greater and important, and I hope we will be able to continue to join forces, time, bring money and financing to this organization to make the life and the future of the Jewish people in the world and in Israel greater and better every day, every year and forever. Mazal Tov, and hope to see all of you very soon.
Hello everybody, my name is Charlotte Grib. I'm the Deputy Director of ELNET in France. Over the past 10 years, with our board and professionals in the office in Paris, we've made great achievement, taken up big challenges, and inspire the action of ELNET across Europe. With your support, we organize more than 200 delegations, bringing 1,000 officials in Israel. Some successes illustrate our action more than words can do, so thank you very much for your support, leadership, and commitment.
All my life, I have dreamed of devoting my energy to defending Israel and the Jewish people. Thanks to ELNET, this dream came true. In barely 10 years, we have moved the line and changed the way the French look at Israel and the Arab-Israeli conflict. The few pictures we have just shown you testify to this. We owe you these successes. It's also thanks to your support and commitment. But this is only the beginning of this battle of truth against the industry of lie. We rely on you more than ever. Thank you very much.
Mike, I'd like to jump in here a minute because I just received some really exciting news. Our board members have just committed to a major challenge matching grant for every donation raised during this event. We thank our board members for this generous offer and hope you will help us meet their challenge. Please donate directly at our website or click the donate button at the bottom of your screen. Thank you again for your generous support and leadership. Back to you, Mike.
What an amazing announcement. Thank you, David. And let's hear it for ELNET France. What an impressive team. Educating about and fighting BDS is unfortunately necessary across Europe and the US. In Germany, too, ELNET has worked tirelessly on these efforts and supported the adoption of anti-BDS legislations passed in 2019. In April 2020, the German government announced a full ban on Hezbollah activities in Germany, ending the distinction between the organization's military and political wings. ELNET intensively supported this legislative effort by educating key decision-makers and officials on Iran and Hezbollah. German parliamentary delegations visiting Israel with ELNET over the last year participated in strategic briefings on Hezbollah and the threat to Israel. Every member of these delegations, representing a broad political spectrum in Germany, voted in favor of the ban. The IDF, in a public announcement, credited ELNET with educating German policymakers about Hezbollah's threat, leading to the German decision. Germany is the third European country, following the UK and the Netherlands, to adopt the full ban on Hezbollah. Germany's decision created the momentum for more European countries to follow. These monumental achievements would not be possible without the support of donors who understand what it takes to affect this type of action. Our delegations and programming, though costly, are truly priceless. We now have the opportunity to hear from our German affiliate and hope you will be moved to show your support for this amazing team as well as ELNET's work across Europe.
Hello, my name is Thomas Kessler. I'm ELNET's chairman in Germany. On behalf of ELNET's team in Germany, and also personally, I would like to thank you for all your support that you're rendering to us for our daily work. We are working very hard and ambitiously to foster German-European-Israeli relations. They are, for me personally and for our team, a core political element. We are not only trying to improve the relations between Israel and Europe. For us, it's more. It's about values that we want to strengthen our society. It's about civil, tolerant values. It's about liberalism. It's about the way we are living in our society. We are very proud to work in this organization, and we are very grateful for your support. Thank you very much.
Dear friends of ELNET, welcome to Berlin, Germany's capital. My name is Carsten Ovens, and I'm the Executive Director of the European Leadership Network here in Germany. Our mission is to build bridges between Germany and Israel, to bring together policymakers from the governmental as well as from the parliamentarian level with their counterparts in Israel to foster the unique German-Israeli relations. This year, Germany and Israel celebrate 55 years of an incredible, amazing and probably unique friendship. And all of us here in Germany are doing our very best to strengthen these relations thanks to your support. Behind me you can see the Reichstag building where the Bundestag, our German national parliament, resides. And in that very building we found important decisions like, for example, calling the BDS movement a clear anti-Semitic initiative. Or, as end of last year, the Bundestag passed a resolution calling on the German government to dedicate Hezbollah as its whole as a terroristic organization. So this is what is happening behind us. And our mission is to educate policymakers, to inform them about issues and topics that are relevant for Israel and Germany and the bilateral relations. ELNET Germany fosters on three important pillars: foreign and security policy, combating all forms of anti-Semitism, in particular when it comes to Israel-related anti-Semitism, and third, fostering innovation transfer between Germany and the startup nation of Israel. Now, this is a success story, not only for Israel itself as a high-tech nation, but also for the bilateral relations of our two countries.
Thank you, ELNET Germany, for your important work. As you can see, the banning of Hezbollah is expanding across Europe. It's now my pleasure to introduce IDF International spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Kornikas, who frequently meets with ELNET and accompanied ELNET's German delegations to the Hezbollah terror tunnels.
Shalom everyone. I wish I could be there with you in person. However, the realities on the ground that we face require that we use the full resources at our disposal to improve the situation here on the ground. While COVID-19 is the latest in a slew of challenges that the State of Israel is facing, it is certainly not the first one we've faced. We in the IDF operate in the air, at sea, on the ground, and in the cyber domain, day and night, 24/7, 365 days a year, to protect our sovereignty and civilians. At the same time, it's important for us to maintain the IDF's legitimacy around the world. And we are fortunate to have you, ELNET, as amazing partners along the way who work with us day in and day out towards achieving this specific goal. ELNET has been there with us since 2014, working hand in glove with the IDF to tell the true story of the security issues facing the State of Israel. And I'm happy to say that our relationship is only growing and strengthening. Together, we hosted delegations to all of Israel's borders and IDF bases. We've undertaken significant missions by sending senior officers abroad, as well as real-time operational briefings. ELNET's delegations have been amongst the most impactful delegations that we've had. After Operation Northern Shield, ELNET brought one of the first delegations, followed by many more, to view the newly discovered terror tunnels in the north. Your work led to the passing of a bill by the German CDU and SPD parties that ensured that there would be no distinction between Hezbollah's political and military arms. And, most recently, you helped enlighten a delegation of Israel-based EU ambassadors to explain the reality on the ground as we face it in southern Israel. We're confident that the information provided to them will positively affect their approach and their activities of their countries in the region. We want to thank you for your friendship. It's been an incredible year, and I'm excited for what we will accomplish together in the next year coming.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Kornikas. The ELNET network includes not only policymakers, but communal leaders, including Holocaust survivors, who have experienced the dangers of hatred and extremism. Hillel Goldberg, a Holocaust survivor and ELNET supporter, now joins us from his home in Israel.
Hello, I am Hillel Goldberg. I live in Jerusalem with my family. I want to share with you some thoughts on the important work ELNET is doing. I am a survivor of the Shoah, the Holocaust. I am an eyewitness to the decimation of my family during the Nazi occupation of Poland. My father, Shaul Nissan, Zichrono Livracha, was murdered outside our house in a small village near the city of Grudziądz, auf Deutsch Gaudenz. He taught me two following values. Make an enemy into a friend. And secondly, we must all leave this world in a better condition than when we were born. I was 9 years old when I was supposed to be shot by the German SS. Now I am 90 years old, and I'm married with Leah Goldberg for 65 years. I have seen about 50 countries and met people in these different countries, royalties, heads of state, and others. I can tell you, ELNET is very, very extraordinary.
Hillel, thank you so much for your words. Your experience shows why the work of ELNET is so important. We're very grateful that you're with us for so many years. Many people ask me what ELNET is about. 1 year ago, when I was appointed Executive Director of ELNET Poland, I would say that we were an NGO dedicated to strengthening relations between Europe and Israel based on shared democratic values and strategic interests. But after 12 months, I have realized that ELNET is so much more than that. We have organized strategic dialogues between Poland and Israel, important conferences and cultural events. We are in touch with numerous Polish politicians and decision makers across the political spectrum. We sponsored the event celebrating the 70th anniversary of the opening of the first Israeli embassy, thanks to generous support of Mr. Aryeh Zweig. In January 2020, we were officially registered as a foundation in Poland. We opened a new office and hired experienced professionals. ELNET representatives from Poland, Israel, and the US attended the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. We were also invited by the President of Poland to attend an annual gathering with representatives of Jewish organizations working in Poland. We joined a virtual education campaign commemorating the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Our daily work, especially during the worldwide pandemic, involves countless emails and Zoom calls. Many of you were with us when we hosted wonderful supporters of ELNET Poland. We believe that the most impactful part of our work is meeting people face to face and building relationships of trust and mutual understanding. That's why we established a supportive advisory board of prominent leaders comprising top former Polish and Israeli diplomats, business experts, and representatives of Poland's Jewish community. So how do I answer the question of what ELNET is after 12 months of running the Polish office? I like to say that we provide guidance and create a safe space for people from both countries to sit at one table and talk.
ELNET is one of the most important platforms helping Poland and Israel look into the future together.
ELNET is a key partner that offers guidance on Israel and a range of Polish-Israeli issues. It encourages cooperation between our two countries while also bringing a positive energy to the table.
Regardless of how great or how tense current diplomatic relations between our countries might be, the bond between Poland and the Jewish people is unbreakable. Whether one might like it or not, it's an integral part of our country's history and legacy. It's what connects us. We at ELNET Poland have the chutzpah to make a difference. Thank you for supporting our work. Dziękujemy.
ELNET Poland has been instrumental in rebuilding bilateral ties between Poland and Israel following a period of tension. As an emerging economic player, Poland is increasingly important to Israel. Your generosity helps to ensure our ability to produce meaningful and impactful programming and make continued strides towards a safe and more secure Israel.
Coming up, you'll be hearing directly from Israel's Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi and opposition leader Yair Lapid about ELNET's impact across Europe and its importance for Israel.
Brussels is the headquarters of the European Union and NATO, and our office there puts us at the center of European decision-making. Last fall, senior European Parliament members who visited Israel with ELNET were briefed on the dangers of terror financing and incitement and the need to better monitor EU funding. Subsequently, legislators who participated in the ELNET delegation led the drafting of legislation calling on the EU to prevent funding to organizations or individuals involved in terrorism. In May, the European Parliament passed landmark legislation calling on the European Commission to prevent EU funding to organizations or individuals engaged in terrorism. This guarantees that no EU funds are used to finance textbooks inciting violence. And now, we take you to the heart of the European Union, where you will hear from our ELNET EU and NATO Director, Matti Schussler.
Welcome to Europe. Welcome to Brussels. Welcome to the heart of European democracy, the European Parliament. From this building, 705 members of the European Parliament from 27 member states work on a daily basis on passing EU legislation, reports, organize meetings, and have many debates. ELNET, with an office just across the street, is part of this very complex, vital, and also very interesting process by working on improving relationships between the EU and Israel. In the past years, thanks to your support, we've been able to engage with many members of parliament to change the facts on the ground, to influence report, work on legislation, and also bring the first delegation of members of the European Parliament ever by ELNET to Israel, which was a major success. I want to thank you very much for all the work that you have enabled us to do here and that we will continue to do on improving relations between EU and Israel. Welcome to the Council of Europe. In the building behind me, the Prime Ministers and Ministers of the 27 EU member states meet monthly or sometimes more to discuss the EU's policies on the long and short term. Behind me is the main building of the European Commission of the European Union. The European Commission is the executive branch of the EU and puts into place the long and short-term agenda of the European Council, the 27 member states of the EU. ELNET works on a daily basis with policymakers of the European Commission, not only on foreign affairs, but also on investment programs to connect the Israeli startup nation to the European investment plans like Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe that will be put in place shortly. Another important topic that is worked on from the European Commission is the topic of anti-Semitism. As you might know, ELNET works closely with the EU coordinator on anti-Semitism to improve the situation in Europe.
I've been active in the Jewish philanthropic world for many years now, so I know what it means and what it takes for an organization to be really impactful, unique, and important for Jewish continuity. ELNET serves a sector long ignored, but crucial to Israel and to world Jewry. As many of you know, Europe is a major hub of world trade and technology, and is in fact Israel's largest trading partner. With a tumultuous history within Europe, world Jewry and Israel need steady advocacy within Europe to maintain and expand the relationships that are critical to Israel's economic and diplomatic future. Serving on the board of ELNET, EU, and NATO in Europe's political center is at once encouraging and exhilarating. The fact that we're able to do this work in Brussels, once thought almost impossible, is heartening, and being part of it for me has been a very rewarding and moving experience.
Following the historic Abraham Accords with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, ELNET is now preparing for a trilateral strategic dialogue, bringing together senior Arab, European, and Israeli officials, with the aim of encouraging further regional alignment. We are proud to be able to use our unique forum to bolster this historic and monumental step towards greater regional stability and security for Israel. We are honored to have with us my very good friend of 25 years, Foreign Minister of the State of Israel, Gabi Ashkenazi, who will be sitting for a one-on-one interview with retired Brigadier General Mike Herzog, the director of ELNET's Forum of Strategic Dialogue.
Minister Gabi Ashkenazi, thank you for taking time and talking to us ahead of the ELNET Gala. I would like to start by asking you about the recent breakthrough towards Israeli-Arab normalization, the agreements with the UAE, Bahrain, and so on. How do you see the potential impact of this normalization on the region as a whole in terms of stability, the welfare of the region, and a strategic agenda for the region?
Well, I think it's an exciting era. I think it's a game changer, and I'm very happy to be part of it. You know, Mike, if we usually refer to the conflict here by large in two circles, the historic one, Israeli-Arab conflict, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I think no less than we are witnessing I think that the first one, the bigger one, is really fading away, and which I think it's a great news to the region and to us. It's not just the UAE and the Bahrainis. I think it's the other as well. Maybe we'll see other countries joining. But even with the Saudis, for instance, you see a different language. You see a different relationship. Seems to me that we reach a point where the moderate Sunnite countries have realized that they cannot be hostage anymore to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's not that they don't care about it, but they think it's coexist. And I think that's the change here. They don't want to give up the benefit of normalizing the relationship between Israel and their countries, while taking care about the other issue, the Palestinian issue. And I think that that's an opportunity for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. It's not on the expense of the Palestinian. The contrary. We leave the door open. And we understand that only by direct negotiation between us and the Palestinians we will be able to solve the conflict. I belong to those who believe that we have to separate from the Palestinians. When I was in Europe, I said it publicly. We were against annexation. We moved from annexation to normalization. So I think altogether it's an opportunity to strengthen the stability and the security and the peace in the region. I think it's, above all, it's a news to the younger generation. We bring them hope for a better future. I think it's a news for younger generation. We bring them hope. And there is a possibility here for a new architecture in the region. We are on the same page when it's come to Iran, which is a common enemy. Our relationship with some of these countries in the Gulf, and it's not a secret, has been based on this understanding. We are determined to prevent Iran from possess the nuclear weapon as they do. And we are fighting this shoulder to shoulder with the United States, with any administration, as well as other malign activity of the Iranian in the region, which all of us are being affected by.
So, since we talk about the regional architecture and facing Iran, and definitely there is potential, can you say a word about Hezbollah and pushing back against Hezbollah, specifically the designation of all of Hezbollah as a terror organization, not only the military wing? I understand that the ministry is working to that end. Can we join hands with the regional actors to push for that goal?
It's true that one of my first highest priority is to outlaw Hezbollah as a whole, not just as a military wing or terrorist wing. And we have gained some success in Europe with Germany, England, and we are right now are in campaigning that others will join. And I think that's we call it the soft power, but it's helped to weakening Hezbollah and actually maybe to free Lebanon, because Lebanon is on a verge of being a failed state. And we Israelis would like to see on the other side of the border an accountable address, a government that control its terrain, sovereignty, people, etc., and which, you know, it's not the case right now. So, yes, we think they are on board. If you have met, as I did, my colleague from Bahrain and from the EAU, they're not mistaken by the role of Hezbollah. I remember they have the Houthis almost on their border, and the Houthis is something which is exactly like Hezbollah. And it's not a secret that Hezbollah people train the Houthis and others, so they are fully aware to the dangers that Hezbollah projects to the region and to the stability of the region. So basically, you know, my feeling with my colleague, new colleague, I would say, from the Gulf, is that they are, above all, they are against extremism. They are against using the religious for the wrong purposes, be it Hezbollah, be it the Iranian or the Islamic Jihad. They don't care. They don't like, for instance, what the Turks are doing, what Erdogan is doing as well.
So I would like to go back to the issue of the potential impact of Israeli-Arab normalization on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You touched upon it in your earlier answer. Some people say, let's focus on expanding normalization, put the Palestinians aside for now, and later on they may, come around. Others say, no, you have to use it as a bridge to open space for Israeli-Palestinian peacemaking, use the potential that there is in Arab-Israeli normalization for the Israelis and Palestinians. Where are you here? And you express yourself also publicly in favor of opening space for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. How would you do that?
I think it's, as I mentioned before, what we are doing, the normalization, it's not on the expense of the Palestinian. I belong to the generation who fought the Yom Kippur War. We know the consequences of this conflict. If we want to be a Jewish, democratic, secure state, we need to separate from the Palestinian. Period. And the only way to do it is by maintaining a dialogue, not on the expense of Israeli security and other issues. So unfortunately, the Palestinians are refusing to negotiate. I think that they are doing a mistake. I cannot understand how their refusal to come to talk serve their interests. I think they are staying behind the latest development. And during my discussion with the Gulf countries, the foreign ministers, and with the European one, and actually everyone, I'm urging them to use any leverage that they have in order to convince and persuade the Palestinians to come to the table. Look, they can object, suggest, reject, but to refuse to talk, I don't think that's something, I think it's counterproductive for them. And unless that approach do not change, we cannot force them to come to the table. We are open, I'm open, and we understand that we have to maintain a dialogue. In the meantime, I'm doing the best that I can to at least not deteriorate the situation furthermore when it's come to working permits in Israel, humanitarian aids, economic projects. Recently we dealt with 10,000 of Palestinian students who has to go back to their universities and colleges all over the world. So unfortunately they decided to stop the security cooperation. And they are refusing to take the tax money that we collect for them. We discussed it with the European donors, and gladly enough, we are on the same page. And I keep telling to the Palestinians, listen, first take your money before we give you our money. I know that there are different voices within the Palestinian. Hopefully they will reconsider their approach, but I'm not sure. I think it's more a generational issue than the current leadership.
Since ELNET is devoted to fostering Israeli-European relations, I would like to ask you about Europe and where you see Europe. Some people say that Europe is a little bit behind the curve in the sense that they look at everything through the Israeli-Palestinian prism predominantly. They look at the Israeli-Arab normalization this way, they look at the Israeli-European relations this way. You have been talking a lot to European counterparts, so where do you see Europe? Where would you like to see Europe? What can we do to get them more in line with new realities in the region?
Well, I think Europe is important in the region. Europe is important to Israel. I think after the United States is the most important partner or player for us in the region, and I set a goal to this office and to myself to improve the dialogue that we have with Europe. And yes, you're right. I think they condition too much the dialogue between us to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. That's what I tried to explain during my last visit in the Gimnish. They invited me as a guest speaker. So during 3 hours, I explained my position, my view. I think they start to understand that we have to have a dialogue which not conditioned necessarily just to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because by doing that, they literally give a veto to the Palestinian over our Israeli-Europe relationship. I must tell you that on a bilateral relationship with most of the European countries, we have a very good relationship. I talk with almost all of the ministers, the European ministers. I met 27 of them during the Gimlish. Some of them visit me here in Israel, and I visit them. And I think we are on the right track to improve the dialogue, to use more genuine, transparent, intimate relationship than, a megaphone policy like where they're stating this and this and this. They even suggested to resume the association dialogue, which I'm happy to join. So I think things are moving. It's not over yet. You still hear the old voices in Europe, and I think that's some of the issues like the Hezbollah outlaw and others where ELNET and other NGOs can get into the picture. Actually, I know they are doing it and help us to persuade and convince the European that Israeli-Europe relationship are much broader than just, to look at it through the paradigm of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the responsibility of each player.
ELNET has been campaigning to resume the association agreement and the outlawing of Hezbollah. And we have to know that the German foreign minister invited you and the UAE foreign minister, which I think is also a signal in the right direction.
Yeah, it was very exciting meeting to be in the Holocaust Museum in Berlin for the first time with an Arab minister. I think it was very moving and I think meaningful. It was his suggestion, by the way. I think we have to give him the credit for that. But more importantly, I think without the German foreign minister, my colleague, actually my friend Eiko Maas, it was not possible. He suggested to host the two of us, and his hospitality and his initiative was behind all of this meeting, which was very important. Just to demonstrate to you the relationship, we had a very good meeting. By the way, we had a very good working meeting with His Highness Abdallah Ben Zayed, and you would be amazed to see how we went through sometimes the technicality of each agreement, visas, flights, trade. So you see that unlike other peace agreement, that they really want that the peace will exist between people to people. So our objective is how to materialize and to realize this opportunity and to change this to fruits when people can feel the benefit of it and come to Israel to see the places here or to make business and vice versa. So it's different. And right now as we speak, delegation from the foreign minister is down in the Gulf, going to Bahrain, the UAE, and we're expecting them to come on Tuesday to start to sign some of these 20 different agreements between, trade, agriculture, technology, health, visas, embassies, relationship, flight. So it's starting to move, and I'm very happy about it.
I would like to ask a question about the cooperation between the government, in this case the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and non-governmental organizations. ELNET is a non-governmental organization operating in Europe with many offices. How do you see this cooperation and the contribution of organizations such as ELNET to bilateral relations?
Well, I think it's not the first time that we are dealing with NGOs such as ELNET. The most immediate example crossed my mind is AIPAC in the States. And I think it's definitely important. The Foreign Ministry working with ELNET and others. And because in many cases, NGOs or ELNET can use their connection in a way that governments cannot. And they are very helpful and very effective in using this method, which formally a government or a ministry, be it a foreign ministry or others, cannot use, or it's not accessible to him. So in that sense, they are very efficient, and I think it's a vital player in the case of ELNET, definitely in Europe. It's my policy here in the Foreign Affairs that ELNET is a very important player in European policy and in promoting Israeli interests in the continent. Well, Larry, honestly, Larry is a family. But professionally, you cannot mention the name of Larry without thinking about his commitment, his dedication, for many, many years, by the way. I know Larry's from the 90s. And not just Larry, it's his entire family started in AIPAC. I think Larry deserves all the credit for being the visionary man when it's come to ELNET. I think it was his idea, and with a small and dedicated group, he pushed it forward. Since I know Larry for many years, I know the beginning. It was not easy, and I think he should be proud, and we should be very appreciative to where ELNET is today. ELNET is like we have AIPAC in the States, we have ELNET in Europe, and I think that's a great help to the State of Israel. With ELNET, we can achieve more, definitely. So thank you very much, Larry. And on behalf of the ministry, myself, and the government, and the people of Israel, thank you very much for your long dedication, for your commitment, and for your support, and promoting Israeli interests in the region. Thank you very much.
Minister Ashkenazi, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Minister Ashkenazi and General Herzog, for that very informative exchange. We are honored to have you with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. In a few moments, we will hear from Chairman of the Yesh Atid Party and opposition leader in the Knesset, Yair Lapid. Now, some thoughts from the Friends of ELNET Board of Directors.
When ELNET was founded in 2007, skeptics thought that Europe was a lost cause, that Israeli advocacy couldn't work in Europe. 13 years later, I'm proud to say our skeptics have been proven wrong.
Europe's not lost unless we as Americans ignore the challenges overseas and just focus here. And then we have helped to predetermine the future. If you're an American and care deeply about Israel, it's important that you understand that committing all your resources in the U.S. in the long run can't get the total job done.
With the historic Abraham Accords and the Arab world opening up to trade and relations with Israel, ELNET is uniquely poised to help Europe be a part of this positive trajectory for Israel and the Middle East.
ELNET helps European leaders to better understand Israel in all it has to offer, both to Europe and the rest of the region. Though small in size, Israel is a powerhouse of innovation with a history of enterprise.
Much of my proud family's culture bears European heritage. Israel is my homeland, and ELNET is bridging the two for a brighter future.
ELNET is the vehicle to bring European and Israeli politicians together in meaningful dialogue on all aspects of their countries and allow for frank discussions and open exchange of ideas.
ELNET provides Europe with much needed window to all that Israel has to offer as a partner for mutual growth and security.
As Israel's largest trading partner, Europe is critical to Israel's economic security. ELNET helps secure and further business partnerships between Israel and Europe through innovation and strengthened relations.
The most difficult chapter in recent Jewish history began in Germany. Israel now has friends in the German Bundestag, which just this year passed a critical ban on Hezbollah, fully designating it as a terrorist organization. That ELNET had a key role in making this happen is extraordinary. Being part of this organization is an honor and point of tremendous pride.
Our leadership has put forth a challenge grant to stimulate raising as much as we can from this event. Remember that your contribution to FELNET during this gala is doubled. If you already have supported FELNET this year, your additional contribution will be matched during this challenge. You can press the Donate Now button to make your commitment to the Friends of ELNET. There is no time like the present. Congratulations on being part of this major success for relations between Israel and the democracies of Europe.
Thank you, Larry. As a nonpartisan organization, ELNET appreciates all those who care about Israel, whether on the right, left, or anywhere in between. We unite for the betterment of Israel and its future. We will now hear from the chairman of Israel's Yesh Atid party and the leader of the opposition, Knesset member and my friend, Yair Lapid.
Hello to you all. Despite some disagreements, Israel and Europe remain strategic partners. We share a common set of values and we share common interests. ELNET are a tremendous asset for that relationship, and I'm proud to have worked with them over the past years. Hopefully, next year, we can go back to doing diplomacy face-to-face, but in the meantime, I want to thank ELNET and its unbelievable leadership for everything they do for the state of Israel and the relationship between Israel and Europe.
Thank you, Yair, and thank all of you for joining us today. Your support is essential to our continued success. We'd like to close by giving special thanks to those who have sponsored today's program and who have made our mission theirs. Thank you for your generosity and partnership. Shalom.